back from the break and still discussing censorship, self-censorship. I am going to ask you a loaded question now. Because I think self-censorship and political correctness today are responsible for some distortions in culture globally. I'm not just talking about here.
Yeah.
Your feelings on this?
Yeah. Again, you see, I and you can have two different opinions on anything, and that is how we are. That is how, if there are two incidents happening on the road, you will look at a different perspective.
I will have my
I'll have a different perspective.
You
you see, now political correctness in the form, historically in the form of the communist culture or the socialist culture, has been such that they have imposed a lot of correctness on newspapers, like even today in Cuba.
Yes.
You cannot write things, you cannot do things which are politically incorrect. So I think the society and the world is moving towards a more openness in society as far as social ideas are concerned, as far as political ideas are concerned, but militarily it still wants to keep on pursuing a censorship code of some sort. An agenda. Without censorship it can't work. Now, what is happening in the press today also? While we are talking about censorship and constriction of ideas, what the press is doing, sometimes it is distracting people totally away from the real cause and the real issues, and they have this breaking news. They have this breaking news every 2 minutes to distract people from the real things. Now, sensationalization and imagery. Now, the brutalization of people. Nobody wants to look at that. You know, even if a dog is killed on the street, sometimes you don't want to look at it.
Yeah, you
know?
don't. It's
you
offensive.
don't. And if that comes onto television, it hurts. Now, what happens in the houses? You know, if you say that the parents should be practicing all censorship on their children, the parents cannot sit with the children all the time. So some responsibility has to be picked up by the state, by the television mediums on their own to do some self-censorship. They still cannot grade their programs all day that this is something which cannot be watched by a 10-year-old, this cannot be watched by a 16-year-old. They cannot grade it. Therefore, they have to work around the common denominator, the lowest common denominator, something which maybe a 15-year-old or 12-year-old child can see. Something like that. So television, public television, which comes into my homes, on which I cannot use censor. For example, I can still use censor on movies. I know a movie is coming on television, and there are electronic gadgets available today by which we can do censor. Or the television companies mediums are also advertising that this is.
Well, they just cut it.
They just cut it and they do it.
They get fun on the screen.
So what do you do when your children are growing up? So you do some self-censorship, you educate your children also not to do that.
Indian movies are, I'm going to say something now, well, you know, the issue I have with that is we pretend to be so virtuous in the subcontinent.
But we like to watch
our entertainment is completely lascivious, you know, and it is a way belittling for all womankind to be sort of reduced to that.
The gyrations
dancing around bushes, you know. So yes, I do have issues, as a woman I do have issues with that. But when I was talking about political correctness, I was also thinking from another point of view, that in many cultures in the world today, people who observe a more modest form of dress, I am not going to say what it is or how it is, somewhere black, somewhere white, but a more modest form of dress, seem to feel they are in a position to criticize those who wear a less modest form of dress. And the people wearing the less modest form of dress today are no longer in a position to comment on those wearing a more modest form. Why is that happening? That to me is political correctness and self-censorship gone wrong. But I want to understand your views on this.
Yeah, I think you're very right. I think sometimes, Meena, you in your life and I in my life feel that the balance we have achieved is the best. That's true. That's true.
That's 99. Not the part of both of us. This is where we become unforgiving in the first class. This is where our audience goes, oh no, they've really lost it now.
So 99% of people believe that the balance which they have achieved in life is the best. Is it? Everybody should follow that. And that is where the feeling comes in that you ask everybody else who's either more modest and tell them that this is wrong, you know, you are curbing yourself or whatever, and who are more free, if you like, more in one
If
way,
you like.
if you like, then you say this is what you're doing wrong. So I think that kind of criticism shall always be. What I'm doing is the right thing. What everybody else is doing needs some adjustment.
Last thing, let's talk a little bit about PEMRA. PEMRA's regulations. How do you view those?
I think PEMRA regulations, there should be a public input into that.
Sorry?
There should be a public input into it.
Okay.
Into those PEMRA regulations, and I think the important factor is the television media in their struggle for ratings sometimes overextend themselves compared to other channels.
Okay.
One channel can overextend itself, and I think therefore PEMRA regulations, some regulations either at the self-censorship level or at the government level, there should be a public body to look into this. Like, you know, the juries, what is the concept of a jury? The concept of a jury as different from judge is a peer review. You see, the peer review means people from society who are not experts in law, is not experts in anything, but they're experts, they understand the values of the society.
Of life.
That's the jury.
Of life.
So PEMRA and all this censorship should happen at the level of peer review. Now, how can peer review?
And it should reflect that culture, that society.
Yes. And how does peer review come in? Even in the assemblies which are elected? I think assemblies are a good base in a democratic society to pick up people to voice public opinion. You can't pick up me out of the blue from society and say, okay, he's going to be on the censorship committee. But people who are as parliamentarians who have been elected by people are good representatives. So PEMRA or jury levels come from there also. To understand, to guide.
I'm also
and it's a continuous struggle. You see, so don't feel bitter. It's going this way or that way. Every government, even the United States President appoints a Supreme Court judge, and then people keep on commenting that he is now it's going towards a more conservative side for the next 10 years, or it's going towards a more liberal side for the next 10 years. So these things will keep on changing with time.
Okay, well, let's talk about...
have to be
I hope we are not. That is the whole purpose of this discussion. We should learn from the religion. But more after the break, ladies and gentlemen, we will be discussing freedom of expression. See you after this.